Certainly, one is too many, regardless of their age. And while that's true, it seems not to be true when the child is a victim of a pedophile priest, preacher, teacher, coach, law enforcement agent, or other predator who is not paying for their predations, who are part of the 96% of those who sexually victimize children. The problem is that prostitution abolitionists, in conjunction with law enforcement, are so focused on the few that all the scarce and valuable resources are squandered pursuing millions of victims that don't actually exist, while ignoring victims who do exist and who have asked for help. Victims of rape and sexual assault, victims of domestic violence. The number of rapes and sexual assaults reported during the same time period between 2014 and 2018 was 2,168,250, while the number of reported cases of domestic violence was 5,885,160. And undoubtedly, there were other rapes and sexual assaults not reported because law enforcement does not take all the reported cases seriously. And in fact, from 1991 to 2018, there were 8,109,936 reported rapes and sexual assaults. And of those, there were 732,149 arrests, or about 9% of all reported rapes and sexual assaults, which means there were 7,377,787 cases which were not solved and where a victim went without justice. One of the other claims made by the Polaris Project was that the poor sex-trafficked children and adult women are forced to work from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., 7 days a week, and the estimated number of men that a woman or child must have sex with daily is 25 to 48 men. This is laughable on many levels, but there is no doubt that my consenting adult sex worker friends who advertise for clients wonder where on earth these traffickers are able to find that many men day after day when the willing sex workers are lucky to find 10 paying clients a week. And if there were more than one person being held in an apartment or house or hotel room, and they were forced to see 25 to 48 men per day, wouldn't the neighbors get suspicious about the long lines waiting outside and all the cars taking up the parking spaces in the area? In addition to there not being enough children, would there be enough men in the U.S. to provide work for the 98% who are adult sex workers if there were 100,000 minors, or 1.80%, forced to work only 100 days a year instead of 365 days a year, and were forced to see only 10 men per day, requiring a minimum of 100 million men to provide them with work? What is the total population of males in the U.S.? The 2020 census has not yet taken place, but in 2012, there were an estimated 154,492,067 males total, of which approximately 107,965,933 were of the age who might pay for sex. It is unknown how many of them had the financial resources to do so, or how many of those men were good Christians and would not cheat on their wives. Granted, a number of men are repeat clients, so I accounted for that by using fewer days per year, just 100, and having them forced to service only 10 men per day, which is fewer than the abolitionists claim that victims are forced to work each day. And taking a calculator, I multiplied 100,000 children by 10 men a day by 100 days, and you get 100 million. So if the child sex trafficking victims are providing sex for 100 million men, where do the adult sex workers and adult sex trafficking victims find men to pay them? Here's what the numbers would look like for adult male, female, and trans persons in sex work who comprise 98% of all persons in the sex trade. If there were only 100,000 minors, there would be approximately 5,524,862 adult sex workers or sex trafficking victims, which comprise the 98% of all persons involved in prostitution. And if those adults also only provided sex to 10 men per day and only worked 100 days per year, then without any repeat Johns, there would need to be 5,524,861,863 678 men. Where will we find enough men for everybody? And how many cops would it take to arrest all those Johns? Would we have to import men from Mars? Who benefits from all these wild claims of untold numbers of victims of sex trafficking? Well, it isn't the sex workers. However, it is all the untold number of rescue organizations that have proliferated through the years because of the campaigns to, quote, create awareness and the media hysteria that has led people to make substantial donations to these organizations. In just the few organizations that sex worker activists found on GuideStar, the combined income for 2017 was $1,121,793,807, of which $510,257,592 was paid in salaries. One organization, Save the Children Federation, had an income in 2018 of $818,483,660 and paid out over $106 million in salary. The president of the organization was paid nearly $500,000 in 2017. In the 2018 IRS filing, salaries for many of the top people were at least over $150,000 plus other compensation, and most ranged in the $250,000 to $300,000 a year. Talk about victim pimps. It is easy to see why someone would start a nonprofit to rescue all those poor child sex trafficking victims. Rescuing children rakes in the money big time. But how much of that money actually went to help the 18 minors who were rescued in 2018? Rescue organizations aren't the only beneficiaries of these lives. If you're an academic, you are sure to get a grant to conduct yet more research on sex trafficking, particularly if you are showing the evils of prostitution and appealing to those who subscribe to the belief that all prostitution is sex trafficking and needs to be abolished. Academia.edu lists thousands of published papers from those who believe that just one more research paper will finally stop the trafficking in persons. Now you know why the prostitution abolitionists lie. The fake sex trafficking crusade really pays. And if they wanted to help the victims who do exist, whether it is a victim of the 96% of predators whom the child knows and trusts, or the fewer than 4% whose predators pay to rape them, these lies need to stop, and society must focus on all the victims, and not just the few who are sex trafficked. These videos are just a fraction of what you will find on my website, policeprostitutionandpolitics.com. All of the original sources and links to them can be found under Operation Do the Math, including the origin for the oft-cited claims that there are 100,000 to 300,000 victims of child sex trafficking in the U.S. every year, and the average age of entry into prostitution is between 12 and 14. In addition to the important statistics which prove the prostitution abolitionists are lying, you will find many articles, posters, PDFs, and videos about this important issue. The lies told by these abolitionists have never been about helping victims of sex trafficking. Rather, it is about a crusade to abolish all consenting adult commercial sex, whether it's prostitution, stripping, porn, or other expressions of adult sexuality. These people do not care about anyone who is a real victim, whether it be a victim of rape or sexual assault, domestic violence, or even sex trafficking. If it were about the victims, they would assist sex workers in decriminalizing the work, which is consensual, so that there are resources available to help the victims of the 96% of all child sexual exploitation, which is at the hands of someone the child knows and trusts, not just strangers looking to pay for their predations. Next time you hear someone make another wild claim about sex trafficking victims, why not hand them a calculator and tell them to do the math?